then he's going to talk to us about airplane fuel released into the atmosphere. And I do know that he lives close to the airport and knows a lot about this. And I didn't even know there was a problem. And being in real estate, it's very important that I do know these things.
Are you saying that you failed to disclose a potential?
Absolutely, yes. So I guess now I'll just turn the floor over to him.
What's his name? No.
I know, I'm just getting it. I'm getting the message that I used to talk to him.
On the wrong phone.
Yeah. I know, I'm wondering it. I want to say it's Gray.
Gerald.
What?
Gerald.
Gerald. There we go. You want to come up here and talk?
Yeah, thank you.
We'll be very interested in what you're talking. It sounds like you got something new to talk about.
Yeah, I try. Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me? Ready?
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead and use it because they pick it up from here.
Hello?
You got it.
Please feel free to interrupt me as I'm speaking if you want additional details or something's unclear that I'm saying. I just want this to be as much conversation as possible. But my name is Gerald Clift. I'm a Placerville resident, and as mentioned, I live right by the airport. And I'm here today to discuss lead aviation fuel and its effects on children, and what we can do to mitigate that as a county. As I'm sure many of you are aware, study after study has shown there is no safe level of lead exposure for children. That's why we've eliminated it from paint, car gasoline, everything you can think of. However, it is still in aviation fuel. And
really?
Yes, I'm going to discuss three things. First, its effects on children, then what some airports have done to mitigate that, and lastly, what I'm asking the county to do to mitigate that. Last year, a study was completed by the county of Santa Clara that found that children within a half-mile of their airport had blood lead levels that exceeded those of Flint, Michigan at the height of the crisis. Wow. And in some cases were double the exposure of the children in Flint, Michigan. Now, our airport is not as busy as Santa Clara counties, but the study was consistent with studies that were done by the University of Chicago, Duke University, and others that have looked at the issue, specifically children living close to an airport. Many airports have been doing things to try to mitigate this exposure. 70 airports in the country, according to the Wall Street Journal, offer both leaded and unleaded fuel in order to give people the option to use unleaded so that the air in the atmosphere, according to the FAA, doesn't increase in the area near the airport. Actually, 70% of the lead in the atmosphere is caused by piston engine small airplanes, not the commercial airplanes you see for JetBlue or Southwest. Those are using jet fuel, which don't have lead in it. The efforts to mitigate it have largely stemmed from three things. The first are the studies that I mentioned, along with other studies. The second was a congressional hearing in July titled Toxic Air, How Leaded Aviation Fuel is Poisoning America's Children. And lastly was an announcement by the EPA last month that they're proposing to declare a public health hazard. I'm sorry, did someone say something? No. They're both proposing to declare a public health hazard over its effects specifically on children. So the cities all over the country have airports right next to homes, or in our case, we have K-8 school within a half mile of our airport, and we have, of course, Lions Park within a half mile of our airport. All these airports that have children nearby are looking at things they can do. Long Beach just voted 2 weeks ago to look at several options, including paying pilots the difference in cost between unleaded and leaded fuel. And now I know when we switched to unleaded gasoline for cars, we asked commuters to pay the difference. But I reached out to Placerville Airport and asked what our fuel estimates were every month. And based on those fuel estimates and the estimates, I've seen an additional cost of about 60 to 85 cents more a gallon. It'd be between $17,000 and $24,000 a year for the county to pay pilots to use unleaded fuel and have a net zero cost to them. What I've been doing is I've been trying to elevate this issue at the county level. This has received extensive coverage. It's not just a liberal or conservative issue. It's covered by the Washington Post, Fox News extensively, Wall Street Journal, NBC, MSN. It's widespread coverage. And what I'm asking our county to do is to switch to unleaded fuel. At the very least, I'd like them to offer unleaded fuel. And at the very, very least, I'd like them to stop flying aircraft over Lions Park. Lions Park has a lot of children that go there. I live right next to the airport. I have an 8-month-old and a 3-year-old, which is why I'm particularly concerned with this. We do soccer practice there. We go out to play there. If you look at the map of the airport, the line of the runway does not go over the park. In order to fly over the park, you have to do a hard right. Most of the time they don't do that, but according to CBS, literally droplets of lead that don't burn the exhaust drop from the aircraft onto the ground, not to mention the air itself. So I'd like them to at least do that. The companies that offer unleaded fuel vary. There's a Swift Gas and a company called GAMI. Swift Gas is what's currently used throughout the country on the 70 airports, according to the Wall Street Journal, that do use unleaded fuel and offer it with leaded. The problem with that fuel is that it's not UL 94, which means 94 octane, and about only 2/3 of the piston engine aircraft can run off that unleaded fuel. So we can't have aircraft just filling up with the wrong gas and falling out of the sky, because that would cause a problem, obviously, for the pilots and for anyone below. However, there are 3 airports, San Martin, Reed Hillview, and Santa Monica, that all just this year banned leaded fuel entirely and are exclusively serving that unleaded fuel. However, 2 months ago in September, the FAA announced that they approved a unleaded 100 octane fuel, which is the same octane as leaded fuel, that can be used by the entire piston fleet. Now, this fuel has been tested for in 12 years. However, because it is just approved, the demand for it is through the roof. Everyone wants it. I have personally spoken to the president of the company, and they said they want to provide it on an equitable basis, places that need it most. So they're focusing on Bakersfield first for a flight school there for the children, focusing on Santa Clara County, specifically because they're studying, they've already banned leaded fuel, but they'd like to prioritize this high on the list. He's asking me to reach out to local airports to get their fuel estimates that I provided to him, so trying to create a distribution map, and they think they could have it to us by July of next year for our fuel contract. The issue is to get our county to agree to sign up for that fuel so that we can have unleaded fuel. Like I said, at least offer unleaded fuel at the airport, even if we're not exclusively going to serve it. And the deadline for our county to make that agreement, I believe, is January. It's called a RFP. I forget exactly what the
request for proposal.
Thank you. And I believe January they're supposed to have that done. I'm asking them to contact the company. I hope that they are, but really right now it's just me, and I would greatly appreciate if you or anyone could either call your county supervisor, call on a public comment, and call in on Zoom and at 1 p.m. today if you want, or anytime, just to let them know that this is something you're concerned about, and you don't necessarily have to agree with any of the solutions I'm suggesting, but anything we can do to mitigate the lead exposure. That's all I'm advocating. Something we can do. I'm not trying to be rigid on one solution. Obviously, with children, I prefer we switch to unleaded, but if we could reduce flyover to the park, we could just offer unleaded. I'd love that. There are benefits to pilots as well. FAA testing has shown that this is actually less of a detonation risk than lead fuel. It also has a reduced spark plug maintenance for pilots, and is supposed to reduce the interval of oil changes to about half as many times you have to replace your oil. So, and actually additional gas mileage, so you can actually take your plane farther. Now, I realize even with those benefits, it might not be a net zero in terms of the 60-85 cents for a gallon. That cost is supposed to go down over time, but this is a brand new fuel, so it is initially going to be a slight increased cost. So, yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm just trying to tell people what the issue is. But you don't take my word for it. I've created a website, safeairportgas.com. On there, it's just a link to a bunch of articles, whether you're liberal or conservative or somewhere in the middle. I have an article for you, from some hopefully source that you trust, and it's extensive coverage across the country. Get that again at safeairportgas.com. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for one specific thing that has to be done to fix it. And if you want to come to me like, Gerald, you're totally off on this, all those other studies are wrong, those airports are wrong for switching unleaded, the FAA saying they want to ban leaded fuel by 2030, they're wrong too. Talk to me. I'm not trying to say I know everything.
At the Air Resources Board, the one that mandates all of our EPA stuff. They are above everybody. In this state, the governor can't even direct that.
Mhm.
Why haven't you gone to them and because this is right up their alley. They're the ones that threw us under the unleaded bus years ago.
I imagine there will be a statewide ban probably before there is a federal ban. I mean, that's what happened with cars. The timing in which that happened, I don't know. Obviously, my children are young, so I like it to happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
It's going to happen earlier at a county level. Frankly, there's not enough unleaded fuel. If California tomorrow was to ban unleaded fuel across the state of California, it wouldn't happen.
Why is that? That doesn't make sense.
Well, these are there's the production. They're not producing enough yet. So they hope to over time for the FAA and the EPA. They expect to be able to have it by 2030. So even though this fuel that I'm talking about, the 100 octane has existed for more than 12 years for testing, it only just recently, back in September, got a full approval for the piston engine fleet. And that's according to MSN, Washington Post, the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, and others. But I have not explicitly reached out to them. I mean, they might be able to do something for the state. I don't think they would pick on just our county. And again, I don't want to be so rigid as to say that every airport, perfect world, yes, every airport be unleaded. But right now we're at a point we should prioritize places that have homes right by them, schools, parks. I would say our airport would have a lot more exposure to children than say Georgetown Airport, for example.
They have an airport.
Yeah, yes, but yeah, I mean, we just look at ours on a map. We got homes surrounding it. Mine's one of them. Lions Park. I mean, I think Lions Park's the best park in the park in Placerville. It's a very, very beautiful park. It's big. There's lots to do there. There's hiking. There's disc golf, tennis. It's a really nice park, and we are within the means to be able to do it. Other airports have already done it. We're not trying to do something new that no one has done before. Other airports have already switched entirely, 3 of them, and another 70 are offering both. I just want us to take this opportunity that this company wants to provide it to us because they said they want to provide on an equitable basis, and they do see a need for us. And I want our county to work with them to get that fuel for us next year. Again, I'm not trying to, I could say I want it to happen tomorrow. That's not going to happen. I understand how government works. We have a contract. I would like that fuel contract for next July to include unleaded fuel in some form.
Have you talked with the airport manager for the county and for city of South Lake Tahoe?
I talked with the airport administrator, I believe. Is he over South Lake Tahoe too? I thought it was just Georgetown.
No.
Oh, okay.
South Lake Tahoe is the city.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I spoke with South Lake Tahoe. They're supposed to get back to me. I spoke with, and I was hesitant to even bring that up, but since you asked, he has told me that if I want any more information from him, I would need a subpoena. So I have not called him anymore. I have spoken to him 15 minutes according to my call logs on 4 different occasions. The first time I became aware of the issue after reading an article about it, I asked him if we could switch to unleaded fuel. He told me only 2 airplanes on at the airport could use the unleaded fuel UL 94 that most of the airports are doing, which I said, okay, that's not practical. Although about 70%, according to what I've read in other sources, have said that they could use it, but it seemed low to me. But regardless, I didn't push that option. Then I called to ask if he could stop flying over Lions Park. He said something that would take about 5 years to get done, and dismissed that. I called and I asked about this new fuel, GAMI. I told him I had spoken to the president of the company, like to give it to us. He was very alarmed that I was speaking to a company about our airport, and told me if he could talk to me again, I needed a subpoena, and hung up on me. I don't mean to disparage anyone. I'm sure there's a lot going on in his job that is much more important for safety than what I'm talking about, but that is not an avenue that I can no longer go down. I have spoken to the airport administrator at Santa Clara County, Eric Peterson. We're not the nicest guy in the world. He's talking to me many times, sent me emails at 11 p.m. He very, very helpful in terms of their experience, because at Santa Clara County, Reed Hillview Airport was the first to switch to unleaded entirely. So he can discuss the process that they did to do that. And then now they're also getting it next year. So he's also been very helpful to talk about what this other company is doing to get the fuel to them next year. So I've asked the county to do that as well. After I was told not to call anymore, I reached out to my supervisor. My supervisor reached out to the airport staff, and they told me airport staff said this was not FAA approved. I subsequently went to a county supervisors meeting last week and provided a document that's in the public record, which you can see, that has an email from the FAA explicitly stating that is FAA approved, along with articles from Washington Post, MSN, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, and others reporting on it being FAA approved. You can look it up yourself on the FAA's website. If you go to FAA, just Google FAA supplemental type certificates. It's a supplemental type certificate that is approved for every piston engine aircraft. It's a huge list of all the makes and models and engines, and we verified that way as well. After I did that, the supervisor staff told me that it's very unfortunate if they're getting incorrect information from the airport, and that they would reach out. I've not yet heard back from them. That was a week ago, so they could still be talking about. Again, this may be very important to me. I understand it's not the most important issue to you or to the county or to the city. I just, I have been doing what I can to elevate this issue to others, and I appreciate that as a suggestion, but that's no longer an option for me to reach out directly to the airport.
Yeah, and the only reason I make that suggestion is that I used to be the manager for airports in the county, all of them, South Lake Tahoe, Georgetown, and Placerville. And if I was still there, I got to tell you, I'd be on your side. It's been proven already that it works in other airports throughout the country. So we just have to get in line. That's all.
Okay, so then you must know exactly what I'm talking about with in terms of supplemental type certificates, that it can be used. I understand there's a decal they have to put on the front of their aircraft.
Yep.
And again, I'm not trying to push for, it has to be this way and it has to happen tomorrow. I would like some effort to mitigate it. And as of now, I have not seen any progress on that. Doesn't mean it's not happening behind the scenes. The most recent email I received from my supervisor, which again, many issues going on, and I supervise people at my work too. I work for budgets for the Department of the State of California. I understand that I have to rely on what people below me tell me, but they said that I was contacting staff too much and that I should not be contacting county staff at all. Now, I have spoken to the airport individual I mentioned several times. I like to pick on people, but 15 minutes for my call logs. I spoke to the assistant to Karen Garner, the planning department, one time for 5 minutes, and I've not spoken to anyone else. So I was a bit taken aback by being told that. However, I don't know. You don't know me. You don't know. Maybe I am just out there harassing people. I don't believe that I am. I looked at my phone logs, and I don't think 15 minutes is unreasonable to speak with someone. I mean, I get crazy public records requests sometimes in my office, and we do them. Sometimes it holds us up, and it takes a lot more than 15 minutes. But it's you work for the government. I feel like we're supposed to be responsive to people. But I appreciate you saying that you would support this if you were still in that position. I'm hoping that something can happen. I understand no one wants to hear about more expensive gasoline. I wouldn't want to hear that either. But lead gas is horrible. I mean, I didn't realize this until
You can afford a plane, you can afford an extra 85 cents, right?
well, yeah, I guess for NASCAR, they had an exemption too previously. They're no longer doing it either. But when the Clean Air Act passed and expanded for the country, was leaded aviation and NASCAR, because the two things still couldn't figure it out. And after NASCAR stopped, they started doing analysis of a bunch of airports. Sorry, a bunch of a NASCAR area in Florida, and they found like in the surrounding area, for like miles, test scores just went up and up and up every year after that, until about 7 years later they changed the type of test they were giving, so it was fair to keep testing. But point being, lead's horrible. I mean, it just is, and people. No one's tried to downplay my concerns at all. I understand. I'm not trying to be naive. We're probably talking about a couple of IQ points for my children nearby. It's not going to be like they're going to have an assistant the rest of their life to get a job. But I mean, a couple IQ points is meaningful. That can be the difference between passing important tests for your career or having better options in life. So I think it's an important thing. I hope that we can do something, and I really hope we can do something by July of next year. And if you think of other options too, again, I'm not trying to be rigid. If you think of something else that I'm not thinking of, I'm doing the best I can with the information I have. If you go to my website, safeairportgas.com, I have a news spot there where I list a bunch of other cities and airports across the country that are also been dealing with this and solutions that they've been trying to come up with to mitigate it. So I've read what I can to come up with what I think would be good solutions, but it doesn't mean that I know everything. I absolutely do not want to emphasize that I know everything. I've had to call probably 24 airports just for myself to learn more about the issue. You know, I mean, it's one thing to read things, it's one thing to talk to people that are currently implementing it. Like I said, County of Santa Clara Airport Director Eric Peterson, he's been there for 25 years. One of the best people to talk to because he's transitioned to unleaded because they had to, and now he's transitioned to this 100 octane unleaded. So he knows of the process. And I really appreciate everything he said to me and the time he spent with me.
Yeah. You could get a letter from him.
Well, I've gotten emails from him, and he's encouraged me to say, hey, if your county officials want to call me. And I've told the county that, and I've kept the county's information. I don't know if they've called him. I asked if there's been any progress on either a meeting with the company, which airport staff told my supervisor that they would have a meeting, and or contacting him, and I've not received a response for an affirmative on either one of those.
Good.
Thank you. Part of my
Yep.
life here is
No, thank you.
a lot of mechanic during my
Good to bring it up.
and I breathe a lot of leaded fuel.
Yes, and
Could be a damaging, huh?
yes,
I was just thinking of Lauren.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
it's most damaging if you're 5 years old and under in terms of
Oh, I was
developmental.
older than that when I started working on cars.
Yes, but I have read, and most of the focus is on children. I have read if you're over 65 and you live near an airport, there's a study of the EPA list, because the EPA just had a hearing on this 2 weeks ago, and they have like 200 documents they attached to it. Just, you know, you just pour through your information. And there was one study there that found if you live within I think it was 2 miles of the airport or over 65, your cardiovascular issues were significantly higher. And again, not a lot of focus on that. Most of the focus is on children, but it's not good. I mean, we know it's a bad substance. I think we're talking about children. I think we should do what we can to mitigate it. I mean, and you said you know, I mean, you must have looked South Lake Tahoe, man. They have like, I was blown away, like 30 different restrictions. When they take off, we got like immediately turn right and immediately turn left, like, so for all noise restrictions. And our airport has one restriction where like I think they have to turn like 10 degrees north or something when they're taking off. Cameron Park has one. So I'm not trying to micromanage people. I don't want to tell people they have to do things. I'm not trying to make a permanent thing, especially if we have unleaded. I don't care. But in the meantime, if we could just not fly directly over the park, I would feel more comfortable with my children there. I imagine other parents were. Most of the people that I've talked to are incredibly alarmed when I bring this up. Some are nonchalant. Even pilots, most of the pilots I've talked to, because I mean the FAA, you can just look up you know, literally everyone that owns a plane. And most I've talked to are like, yeah, I don't really care what fuel I use as long as it works. One person told me I've never used unleaded in any circumstances ever, but that was the exception. And
You can always find one of those.
yeah. I think for the most part, people are reasonable. I don't think anyone's a villain here. I don't think a bunch of pilots are going, you know, it's a problem we have in society. I want to work with everyone that's interested to fix it. And I really don't want to come across as like some like angry guy that thinks the government's poisoning our children. They're doing it on purpose. They don't want us. That's not what I'm trying to do. I understand there's costs. I'm doing my best I can to estimate. I'm going to do the best I can to come up with solutions that don't cost anything and have little impact to everyone involved. And I appreciate your input and appreciate anything else you could suggest that we could do to mitigate it. Because I've only learned about this since October 12th. And I'm doing what I can to get something changed, but I kind of running out of ideas. If it seems like it would have to happen at the supervisory level. I hope that it does. I was hoping initially I could just call the airport and we could, you know, something could happen, but I don't think that's going to be the way it goes. I mean, I asked initially just for my first call is, can I get a make and model of every plane that's parked at the airport? Because then I could determine, can they use UL 94? And, you know, I was told, oh, only 2 aircraft can use it, and we can't provide you the make and models because that's private information. And I was like, well, I mean, I could look up name, address, and make and model of every person in the county. I just don't know where they're parked. Is it really that private? And doesn't matter. I'm not trying to push for UL 94 after learning about this UL 100 and learning that it's FAA approved in September and speaking with the president of the company and him being enthusiastic about sending it to us because of our proximity to Lions Park and a K-8 school, the Adventist school there. I think that's a better solution. It doesn't make sense to be going for something only 2/3 or maybe even only 2 aircraft can use. So, sorry if that was a long answer. I just want to emphasize, I'm not trying to be rigid. I really just want to mitigate whatever the solution is. I just want to mitigate that exposure for children.
Good idea.
I never thought, first of all, I didn't even know they were using letting fuel anymore. I thought it was all gone.
Me neither. Most people, including myself, didn't know until the EPA's announcement last month because that got widespread coverage across the various news outlets. So I kind of thought lead fuel was over, but I understand you can't replace it if planes are going to start falling out of the air. So 94 octane was not a practical solution to replace the entire piston fleet. But in fact, even that company, though, that company provides 94 octane, they are working on an approval for a 100 octane for their fuel as well. And they say as soon as that is approved, they're just going to switch. Everyone's currently a UL 94 customer is going to get the UL 100. It just so happens this other company, GAMI, got approved first. So
Cool.
I'll push it.
Thank you very much, Gerald, for enlightening us.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
That was outstanding.